Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 84 of the Dads and Ed podcast. My name is Josh Allen, Tech Integration Specialist for Technology Works, and that's what we love about it. Very excited for this evening. We're going to have Jon Becker on here in about 15 minutes or so to kind of talk about higher ed. Not a area that we dive into a whole bunch on the show, so it'd be good to have his perspective and talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit about social media and kind of how that's changed. Jon and I connected on social media very early on, so it'll be fun to have him on. If you want to get in touch with the show, we'll get that stuff out of the way as Devin gets back in here. You can always tweet at us at Dads and Ed. You can use the hashtag Dads and Ed at any time. As always, just some great stuff going on there. If you missed part of the show, you can watch on dadsanded.com. All of those are embedded there. As well as if you want to listen, subscribe in iTunes or check out Google Play. Either one, just do a search for Dads and Ed. As always, make sure to check out the Education Podcast Network, which we are a proud member of. You can find them at edupodcastnetwork.com. One of the things that I want to get into, this is NETA week. If you've watched the show the last few years, I've been on the NETA board. Brent was on for a while, and this is our big spring conference. Today, I actually did a workshop on Go Open and open license resources, which is always fun. Chat about, had a great time, but it definitely a little bit of sweet, a little surreal as I was driving down, having absolutely no responsibility. That was kind of the great part of it. But we're excited for that. We were usually NETA week as Devin joins in. We have one of the keynote speakers join us. However, the keynote speaker for Friday, who would have been great to have on, we already had on, Joe Sanfilippo. Right. So we're just ahead of our time. Like we were like, a year in advance from there. So that's right. Welcome, Devin. Got the computer restarted?
Yeah, it was acting like it was 2 weeks behind. I got on, and the show notes were for Nick Polyak, and the login information, the link for tonight was I did not have access to, and I couldn't get anything going. So yeah,
super.
Got it going.
That's always good. All right. Well, I already went through how you connect, so we're ready to jump right into water cooler. Well, I guess you could introduce yourself.
I could introduce myself. Yeah, Devin Schoening, currently employed as the Instructional Technology Program Lead in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and Council Bluffs schools. And my two lovely kids, Grace and Claire, my wonderful wife, Erin. So
good. I don't know if there's an episode where we finally don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah, I don't know either. It feels like it's almost a thing now. Like we just have to do it, even though.
Yeah, I mean, it's like. I was going to say it's like brushing your teeth, but brushing your teeth probably is a little bit more essential than to be socially acceptable.
Well, you never know. Maybe we're picking up a new, a new listener here and there.
True.
Somebody goes back and listens to an old one. They don't know who we are. I suppose it's used. It's a.
Well, nights like tonight when we have someone who's in higher ed, which is not an avenue that we jump into very much, we might pick up some new East Coast listeners. So
that is true.
Never know. Speaking of having chats with people, one of the things that we kind of wanted to dip our toe into a little bit, and we're going to talk with Jon, about social media. But over the weekend, there is let's back up a little bit. There is a chat that is a very administrator-based chat. I feel like Saturday mornings called Sat Chat. I've don't regularly participate, although I've seen it on Monday, Saturday mornings, checking Twitter, see what's going on in the morning. And over the weekend, our former guest, multi-time guest, Joe Mazza, who was just on the show a month or so ago, was hosting. And if you listen to either one of our episodes with Joe, that I think this is our first full year, and then a couple weeks ago, that he's very passionate about parent involvement, and more specifically, as of recently, he's been working on dad involvement. How do we get more dads in schools? You know, a lot of schools have done research, and they know that a lot of moms show up for a number of reasons. A lot of dads don't show up for a number of reasons. And so his thing, I guess, for lack of better terms, is how do we get dads involved? How do we get them there? Well, on Saturday morning, someone critiqued, I guess is one way to put it, why you would be having a dad-focused chat on SatChat, and was a little critical of Joe and the organizers. Joe responded back, probably not, and I think he admitted it later, not in the best way, didn't handle it all that great. But it got us talking, in a Voxer group just about that scenario. We obviously host a podcast that, while we've had a wide variety of family backgrounds and we've had a number of females on, I don't know what our ratio is. We don't really keep track of it, but we try to have females on a regular basis. But in the end, we have dads in our name. And it to me, it just kind of struck as odd that someone would criticize that. Especially SatChat in general has all sorts of different topics. Every week is something completely different, like so many of the chats out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. One of the things that I said in our Voxer group is not everything has to be for everybody.
Yeah.
There are probably a lot of people who our podcast doesn't do anything for them, and I am totally fine with that. It does not hurt my feelings. It does not bother me if they listen to Moms as Principal, which I know is a Twitter account. I don't know if it's a podcast, but I guess, one of the things that we'll, can probably bring up with Jon is just the idea of why do we always have to have everyone included in everything? Why can't we have specific events?
Right. And I think that, one of the things that I was thinking through that too was this whole idea that I don't think there was malicious intent on either side, right? I don't think there wasn't malicious intent, by Joe to exclude a group of people. And I don't think there was malicious intent on the tweet that kind of questioned why this was all about dads. But it is this idea that even though there isn't malicious intent, there was no reason to necessarily question the topic. It was just a topic about how you get dads involved in schools. And I don't think that's, as we talked about, in that Voxer group, and I've talked to people offline about too, that's something that districts do all over the place. I can think of some things where I've seen, dads and donuts, and dads come in and read, and dads do this, and they also have days for moms. Right. I don't think that's a big deal. Who was it? We talked to somebody, I think at somewhere, maybe it was even Joe the first time. But it was the barbecue. There was a school that had dads come in and barbecue or grill after school or something like that. I just didn't think it was that big deal. And I was wondering, I was wondering, why is that even a question? Even though it wasn't malicious, I don't think the person who asked the question was doing it to be any sort of jerk or anything. It was just a question, but it was, I'm kind of with you. Like, it doesn't have to be for everybody.
Right. I think, I think you see a lot of laws that way. We have to make a law for every person who gets offended, and some of those are necessary. Some need to be corrected. But one thing that kind of drives me nuts is unisex bathrooms. Okay. Like, I go to so many places that have just like one stall in there. Why do we have to make a big deal about calling it unisex? Just call it a bathroom.
Yeah, right.
It's one of those, like, having like a whole like 6 stall thing that's a totally different discussion. And now I feel like I'm getting way off track with what we're talking about here. But it just makes me laugh. Like, I have 3 unisex bathrooms in my house.
Right.
I just, for some of these things, I just don't think it should be that big of a deal. We just have to, I just feel like sometimes we just make such a big deal. And probably someone may say that's because you're a white male. And and I don't get it. And maybe that is absolutely 100% true.
Yeah.
I also just think that we are still in this kind of me culture where everyone wants to kind of have, I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of people want to be catered to.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. And this probably goes a little bit beyond what happened on Saturday, but in a way, it's everybody wants to be conformed to instead of conforming with others.
Yeah, and as we've chatted about before, the thing that kind of makes me a little bit sad about that, and this came out in our Voxer group too a little bit, is just this idea that I think people are less likely, people are feeling less comfortable sharing things in online spaces because of that potential pushback. And the pushback kind of for no reason.
Right.
How many people are out there kind of like where the space used to be, you would consider it an open forum for all ideas, and anybody can share, and you still can. But when folks are feeling like, gosh, I'm going to kind of hold this a little closer to the vest just because I don't know how it will be perceived or how, what kind of pushback I'll get online. I think that's a bad. We're in a bad time if that's kind of where we are with especially Twitter, but really it's any social media. But this one happened on Twitter. But that part makes me a little angry and a little sad, I guess.
Yeah, it is too bad that's kind of a little bit of where we're at.
Yeah,
but it's true, unfortunately. All right, Superfan Bill already checking in. People make, he says, people make a big deal out of things at times because they feel inadequate. And I think there is probably some truth to that, where whether it's perceived or reality, wanting to, I don't want to say have that stature, but get out of that inadequacy or somehow try to make up for it. I don't know. I think it's a good point.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a good point.
Water cooler topic for the week. Not water cooler, dad moment of the week. Sorry. Got our 2 segments. We only have like 4 segments, and I just tried to combine half of them into one. Big night around our house on Monday, I think it was, when my now 7-year-old learned how to ride her bike. She was not very anxious about it. I'm sorry. She was extremely anxious about it. And we had to bribe her with McDonald's. If you ride your bike, we'll take you to McDonald's. So fast forward a year, my 5-year-old decides that she wants to ride her bike because then you get to go to McDonald's after you ride your bike. She thinks this is now a thing that you do. Right. So we took her out Monday night. It was by far the easiest bike riding training I've ever done. I didn't have to like she could coast all by herself right away. And so it took a couple times up and down the street, but I didn't have to, do the traditional run, hold the seat behind her. I could just walk down the street with her, and within an hour or two, she was buzzing back and forth down the street, riding with the big kids. So
yeah, that's awesome.
We got 3 bike riders in the house now. It'd be quite the party this summer.
No, that's a good one. Around here. Today was a pretty big day. Claire got her braces today. So we kind of we found a new way to go in debt in our house. The most current way to go in debt is to get braces on one of your kids. But she, she's kind of been, I don't want to say looking forward to it, but talking about having braces. She's one of those kids who kind of gets something in her head and it sticks with her. And I can remember a few years ago, her dentist saying that she may need braces at some point. And I think from that moment, she's thought about it. And so today was the day she went in and she got her brackets and her wire on. And we're kind of going through the first night with braces. And I think it's good. We'll see, maybe in 2 weeks when we're back together, I'll give you a different story, but what are we, 8 hours in, 6 hours in? It's going well.
Yeah, we Maddox just got it for the first time, and they said it may give you the potential of not having to have it later.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that also gives you the potential of paying for it twice.
Twice. That's right.
But anyway.
That's right. We're going with once.
I hope so. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's that part of the show where we get a lot smarter by having someone else join us. We are extremely pleased to be joined live from Nashville, Tennessee, Dr. Jon Becker, Associate Professor of Ed Leadership at Virginia Commonwealth. Dr. Becker, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. And I should make clear I don't live in Nashville. I live in Richmond, Virginia, but I am in Nashville for a conference.
What are you learning about in Nashville?
So this is a conference put on by an organization called the Online Learning Consortium, or OLC for short, which is the organization formerly known as Sloan C. I don't know why they were called Sloan C. But it's probably the biggest organization in the country dedicated to online learning, distance education in higher education.
Well, that was one of the things that I did want to get in with you before we get into more fun stuff. But in higher ed, we were talking, we, for whatever reason, haven't had a lot of higher ed guests on. So give us a little bit, you've been in the higher ed landscape for a long time. What does that kind of look like now? Like where do you see, your institution or other institutions going? I followed you on Twitter for a long time, so I know sometimes you lament the direction that they are going, but where do you see higher ed going right now?
Are you talking with respect to technology or just kind of generally speaking?
You can do generally speaking.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I guess this is the Dads and Ed podcast, so I should say that I get asked often, because I have a 12-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter, and we have a lot of friends and relatives who have kids around the same age, and they say, what's college going to be like when our kids are ready for college, 5-10 years from now? And I would say, depending on the week, my answer would change. Probably not too long ago, I was pretty convinced there were some pretty good arguments that higher education was starting to look like the housing market, and that there was going to be this bubble that burst, and tuition was going up and up and up, and it continues to go up. And at some point, the value proposition is just going to go away, and the whole thing's going to explode like the housing market did. But that doesn't really seem to have happened. I would say for the most part, higher ed seems to be pretty resilient. But it does feel like there's a bit of a sort of turning point now where people are starting to question the overall value of higher education, and really kind of the cost benefit analysis of, is it worth all that tuition? And all the research, everything you look at says there's still huge economic benefits to getting a college degree. But man, is it expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so as an institution, I think higher education has a lot to think about, and that's a big part of what this conference is about. It's about innovation in higher education, and what can we do to kind of raise the value proposition for our customers. We don't call them customers, but the truth is they are.
Right. And so what does that look like? So as we try and create that, where it's maybe a little better value proposition for folks who are going to go to college, what does that look like? What are some of the things that you might look at, happening in the next whatever insert number of years?
That's a really good question. I mean, I've lived for the last, I was just a faculty member, just a professor for 10 years. And then for 5 years, I took on an administrative role where I was in charge of academic innovation and distance learning in particular. And we tried to take a pretty different approach, but I left. I was let go essentially and sent back to my faculty role, because the university wanted to take a different direction. They wanted to take the direction that most universities are taking now, which is to try and scale up online learning.
Yeah.
A lot of institutions seem to think that there's this magic pot of revenue at the end of the online learning rainbow.
Yeah.
and I'm pretty convinced that's not true. So online learning is one form of innovation in higher education that's, being undertaken in various places. Public higher education, certainly in Virginia, and I'm sure in Nebraska and Iowa, the investment in public higher education by our government is dwindling every year. So public institutions are having to figure out ways to deal with the loss of revenue from the state, and so we just keep increasing tuition, and so the only way to make up for that the only way to prevent increasing tuition every year is to try and increase enrollment.
Right.
And there's only, and the demographics say that you can't keep increasing enrollment at the undergraduate, kind of 18, 19, 20-year-old level. And so everyone's trying to get after these non-traditional learners and online learning for adults and master's degrees and all that sort of stuff. I'm not convinced that it's a long-term solution, that it's really that we're going to be able to scale in ways that administrators think we can.
Right.
You mean an administrator has a pie-in-the-sky view that may or may not touch reality?
Imagine that.
Shocking.
Yeah.
So you and I have actually, you were one of the first people that I followed, outside of my local area. And I mean, I was thinking back, we've actually met in person briefly in Philadelphia. I would believe that's 2009. I'm not going to talk about how old we are or how long ago that was, but
man,
we've been on some exactly, yeah. So we've been on social media for a long time, and we've had this discussion on the show a couple times just about how different social media, the pivots it's made, the direction it's kind of flowed back and forth. What do you see as changes that have happened in that social media community?
I guess I can really only speak to my own kind of experience with it, and certainly in the early days, it was a means of connecting and networking, and I was involved in lots of serious conversations about education. And I would say as it grew and more people came on, I've been sort of regularly kind of adjusting how I experience it. I remember there was a while ago I heard an interview with Howard Rheingold, he's one of the OGs of online communities. I mean, he was involved with the Well 30 years ago, like the original online communities. Anyway, he talked about the importance of pruning and tuning your network. And so while I do hear lots of people kind of bemoaning the state of social media, in particular Twitter, and it's not the same as it was in the old days, that may be true, but I feel like I'm able to regularly prune my network, stop following people that aren't adding value to my stream anymore, add new people, and tune it in ways that work for me. So I'll look at different tools, and I'll use TweetDeck, and I create lists, and so I'm just constantly adjusting it so that it continues to work for me, and I change who I follow. When I was a professor for 10 years, I was a professor in the School of Education working with K-12 teachers and administrators, and so my focus was K-12. And then I took the position in the university administration, and suddenly higher ed became of interest. I started following a lot more higher ed people and less K-12 people, and now I'm kind of back in both worlds, and so I'm kind of readjusting again. And so I get that people complain about how much noise there is, and there are problems. There's problems with trolls and racists and sexist people and all that stuff. But I feel like for me, I'm able to adjust it and prune it and tune it in ways that work for me.
Well, and I guess just to follow up that, I mean, that was kind of going to be my point too. I mean, the nice thing about these spaces is we do have control over what we see and what we don't see, right? And I wonder, like, is it just a matter of people haven't, even after, whatever it's been, 7, 8, 9, 10 years for something like Twitter, is it just that they haven't become refined enough in doing that, or is there something else that like draws us into maybe not just pulling away from the things that we don't want to see or hear?
Yeah, maybe. And I will add that I know that I'm fairly privileged in that I don't get attacked in the way some other people do.
Yeah.
I would say particularly some women who I know who are fairly regularly attacked and trolled online, and,
Right.
and I haven't had to deal. I mean, I've had a couple little incidents here and there, but not in the way some other people have.
Right.
And so that's sort of a problem that I haven't had to deal with, and so I can't really speak to it, and it's real.
Yeah.
But for me, and I think for most people, yeah, it is a matter of just adjusting for what works and finding your spaces. A lot of people have left Twitter, are more on Facebook than they were in the past, and so yeah, I think it's just figuring out what works for you, and if something's not working for you, you don't have to do it, right?
Right.
You did not sign a lifelong contract to have your Twitter account open
Yes.
and public and following 10,000 people.
Right.
Right.
Hard to believe. Hey, if your favorite baseball team were to sign or trade for like an MVP caliber outfielder, hypothetically.
Hypothetically. Rhymes with Schmanton.
Yes. Yeah, that's one way. Yeah. How would you define success in year one? Hypothetically.
I would like to go on record as having been opposed to the signing of Giancarlo Stanton.
Okay.
I loved the way the Yankees were going and developing their own talent, and they had a lot of young talent coming through, and Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez, and that was getting me back to the days of when they had Jeter and Rivera and Bernie Williams and homegrown talent.
Yeah.
And then they had to go out and get Stanton, and I just felt like it was taking us back to the old George Steinbrenner days, and it's not working out great so far.
Yeah.
He like strikes out every other at bat, and it's not going so well.
Every other at bat might be an improvement at this point.
Yeah, probably more than that.
Well, and you and I have been in fantasy baseball leagues for a number of years. That is a rule that I have is I do not want any player who just signed a large contract because I feel like more often than not this happens, especially the first year. If you think about people who sign huge contracts, it just seems like so often in any sport, really, not just baseball, but I just feel like their first year is just terrible. They soak in the money, and they don't want to perform.
Oh, so that's it. So the researcher in me feels like, wow, that's a really interesting research question. I'd love to. Yeah. There must be some documentation that would show, like, do players perform better or worse in that first year of a big contract? But here's the other issue, kind of related. Here's something I've noticed that I actually want to have some data and analyze. But I feel like when guys go on the disabled list, their first game back off the disabled list, they have a great game. And it's always the case that I forget to put them back in my lineup off the disabled list. And that first day back, they go 4 for 5 with 2 home runs.
I've got CeCe ready to throw tomorrow. So if he comes out with a no-hitter, I'm excited.
I'm not sure it applies to pitchers. I haven't really thought about that.
I'm going to guess probably it won't tomorrow.
Take a look at it. Like, you guys on the DL, like, watch when they come off that first day back. They have a huge day.
Yeah, Josh, I'm sure you've jinxed it. Even if pitchers aren't included in this, you probably just jinxed yourself for sure from having a big night tomorrow with if CeCe's back.
I don't know. Bartolo almost threw a no-hitter the other night. So old fat guy pitchers.
Yeah.
I mean,
by the way, I was opposed to the CeCe Sabathia signing too, and I was wrong. I was wrong about CeCe. He's a total hoss, and he's been a workhorse for the Yankees.
Maybe in 3 years we'll have you back on, and you can say that you were wrong about Giancarlo as well.
I would like to be wrong about Giancarlo.
I guess it
was for different reasons. I didn't think CeCe, but the CeCe issue wasn't that we paid him a lot of money. It was I didn't think he was gonna. I thought he was gonna break down. He's just a big dude.
Yeah.
And I would add, just to follow up on the the old fat guy pitchers doing well, isn't it kind of nice for guys of I would suppose our age, to see guys like Bartolo Colon go out there and still be able to do it at a really high level for somebody who never didn't play anywhere near that kind of level, but for a guy who doesn't appear to necessarily be in super great shape, right? He's not a health nut by any means, and he's out there doing, almost throwing a no-hitter, perfect game for so long.
It is, and in the past when we've seen it, it's been either like knuckleballers or like crafty lefties, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I saw somebody, they post a picture of Patrick Reed, winner of the Masters, and Bartolo next to each other, and it's like, and who needs to be a health nut to be, excel at their sport? I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse.
Yeah, that's true, I suppose. But I'm going to say it makes me feel better. It makes me feel like, maybe I can get up tomorrow and actually do something,
I don't know about tomorrow.
Tomorrow I'll do some walking. I'm going to walk over that bridge to Nita where you're going to be, and that's going to be my exercise for the day. So aside from baseball, Jon, you obviously talk, big college basketball fan too. What, which sports, even if it's not one of those two, I know those are two that you follow really closely though, which gets you more amped up? What's the one that's
college basketball? I'm a college basketball junkie.
Yeah.
I'll watch college, and so I'm a huge Duke fan.
Yep.
I work at VCU, and VCU has a pretty good program these days.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of fun. College basketball is up here, and everything. I'm a big sports fan generally.
Yeah.
But I don't watch much pro sports these days.
Yeah.
I'm in a hotel room, and I had the Cavaliers game on just before, but I only watched the last 5 minutes. That's all you have to watch in an NBA game anyway, right?
It's true.
Yeah, exactly.
I find that
post a baseball game very much these days. I mean, I'll turn it on if it's on, but I'm a Yankee fan, and I live in Richmond, Virginia, so I only get I get the Orioles games and the Nationals games.
Mm-hmm.
So when the Yankees play either of them, I get to watch them, or if they're on ESPN, I get to watch. But I'm not going to like flip on a random Nationals game and watch.
Right. No, I don't either. I think we found we talked before just about like our sports watching habits and the things that kind of get us going. We, I think it was the last show, or no, one before that probably. We talked about it being our favorite time of the year. With the NCAA tournament happening, with the beginning of baseball. I'm a big golf fan too. So you got the Masters that happens all around that time. Would it also be kind of like your favorite time of the year, or do you have another time that you kind of like better? We were talking about how this is kind of like the time for sports for us, or what, in the last month or so.
Yeah, I would say the month of March, early April is the best time of year for sports. Now it's kind of boring. It's pretty much just the NBA at this point, and baseball. It's early in the baseball season. Baseball season is so damn long.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? You said long. I know Anthony Rizzo from the Cubs just said, I think it was today or yesterday, that he would be totally cool with taking less money if they played less games. I'm assuming based on that comment you made that you'd be all for some sort of decision like that to make the Major League Baseball season shorter.
I think so. I mean, I think pro sports in general ought to be thinking about kind of the modern world that we live in. It's not so much an attention span issue as much as there's just so many more choices these days. People, I think attendance down at baseball games. I feel like I heard that somewhere. But I think, audiences for live sports are just down because we just have so many choices of things to do these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's expensive to be able to give some sort of experience. It's expensive enough, but then to have some sort of experience that beats your surround sound projection, bathroom right there, experience at home, to sit out in the elements. I mean,
my favorite live sport is hockey, but we don't have hockey in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah.
But going to a hockey game is a qualitatively different experience than watching a hockey game on TV.
Yes, I would 1,000,000% agree with that.
Yeah.
So what you guys have minor league baseball where you live?
Yeah, so I live about 5 minutes away from the Kansas City Royals AAA affiliate.
Okay,
And
so we have Richmond actually is the AA team of the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, right.
The Richmond Flying Squirrels.
Yes.
And they are an amazing organization. They do a great job of catering to the community and making games affordable and enjoyable and a real family event. So we go to about a handful of those games a year, and it's my son doesn't know the first thing about baseball, but he knows he gets Dippin' Dots in the second inning, hot dog in the first inning, Dippin' Dots maybe in the third inning, and we get through 5, 6, 7 innings.
yeah,
And my daughter comes too, and she actually knows a little more than my son about it. But it's just there's always something going on in the stadium, and it's a lot of fun. I love minor league baseball.
Right.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. So the AAA affiliate used to be called the Royals, and
Right.
I actually worked for them as an usher years ago, and they played in the cavernous Rosenblatt Stadium, which was big because that's where they hosted the College World Series.
Right.
And so when the NCAA said, well, we're going to build a brand new stadium, they didn't even really include the AAA team. And so they ended up buying land out by where we live in the suburbs, which before it was in more of a working class, the older neighborhood in Omaha. They moved out to where, some of the families live, more families live now. And you're right. It's just such a different experience to go to a minor league game. They have a carousel out in left field. They've got a bar out in left field that you can sit at and watch the game. But we do the same thing. All right, you can play in the playground for a while, but fifth inning, we're gonna go get a snack. You're gonna sit. Dad gets to watch a little bit of the game
Right.
over here. So, yeah, absolutely. One of the last big question that we kind of ask everyone is really the foundation of this podcast, and it's you said you have 12 and 8-year-old. You've been in education in various forms for a while. How did having your kids impact your role as an educator and the role that you have with educators, and vice versa? How does your view of education, both K-12 and higher ed, impact you as a parent?
So we have kind of an interesting story. So we when our son was 2, we moved from New York to Richmond, Virginia, and not really knowing kind of what we were getting into educationally. And we were looking for a preschool for my son, and we were, signed up to go to different like orientation sessions. And I don't know if it was the first or second one we went to. The executive, there was a small school called Sabot at Stony Point, and the executive director said one sentence, and I turned to my wife and I said, "That's it, we're going here." And it was like the old, was it Jerry Maguire line? You had us at hello, and she had us at hello. And at the time it was just a preschool, and now they've merged with a K-8 school, and they're now Sabot at Stony Point. And so it's preschool through 8th grade, and it's this amazing, progressive, Reggio-inspired school. And my son went there from age 3 until 4th grade. And my daughter's there now, and she's in 2nd grade. But my son, he stopped going. I wouldn't say he was kicked out. He just wasn't. It wasn't a good fit for him anymore. He's on the autism spectrum. He's what you call high functioning autistic child who doesn't need school.
Mm-hmm.
He was the kid that was reading all the Harry Potter books in 1st grade, and he's just a voracious reader and learner. And so we now homeschool him. And to sort of come full circle, why it's sort of interesting to me is because I went into education. I'm a professor of education. I'm a strong advocate for public schools. And here I have one kid in private school and one kid in homeschooled.
Right.
But it has really worked out nicely for us.
And I remember, just as a quick follow-up to that, I remember reading about your journey with your son and the decision to homeschool, and it was really it's fascinating because I think that whole idea of of what you assume is going to happen when you have kids, and then what actually happens is not predictable, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, if you would have said to me 3 years ago you'll be homeschooling your kid, I looked at you with like you had three eyes. And I should say it's been really an amazing experience, and most of the credit goes to my wife. She's largely the caretaker and the teacher in homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been amazingly eye-opening what's available in the homeschooling community. There are, I mean, gobs of like Facebook groups of homeschooling parents and local, statewide, national, the resources that are available. This is an interesting kind of ed tech thing, but in the last few weeks, my wife discovered something called OutSchool. You ever heard of outschool.com? I had never heard of it either, but it's like these small classes for kids, and anyone can like sign up to teach, and we pay like $15 a class. And so like right now, my son's taking a 4-week class in marine biology. He's 12 years old. He's taking a marine biology class. There's 4 other kids in the class that are around his age. It's synchronous, so they're in a video conferencing platform, and it's taught by like a retired marine biologist who has, is retired, nothing else to do. And so they meet once a week for an hour and learn together about marine biology. It's a really interesting model. And it's just one of like a zillion resources that are out there for homeschool kids. We also, y'all know about clever.com?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So like we have access to Clever. There's something called Griffin Academy, which is like some woman who homeschooled her kids started this school. I'm not even sure it's a real school, but it's called Griffin Academy. And Griffin Academy has an account with Clever.
Mm-hmm.
And so we now have access to, we pay to be members of Griffin Academy, and now we have access to Clever. And so through that, they have Brain Pop and all the other things. And it's just, the possibilities are like endless.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing what you can do with a child at home these days.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. One of our the NIDA board that I was on, they had one of the board members is in charge of the virtual school for Omaha Public Schools, and it's not necessarily home. It's kind of geared towards homeschool parents, but they come in and it's the same type of thing. The resources, it's not a non-social event like it was perceived to be, back when we were in school. There's so many more opportunities, like you said, for them to meet either face-to-face or online. So yeah, it's amazing some of the things they have access to.
Yeah, and the Facebook groups are like super specific too. It's like, homeschoolers who are left-handed who live on the south side of Richmond.
100 people like this one.
Exactly. It's amazing how many people fit into that kind of criteria.
Well, John, we know that you are probably still on Eastern time, although you are in the Central time zone. We have one more thing that we do called sharing is caring. Do you have a minute to stick around and share something?
Sure.
All right. So we'll give you a couple minutes. You think about either a person, book, article, anything that you want to share, and then we'll let you do that. I am just going to give a quick plug. I think we mentioned it briefly. Devin tweeted out earlier, tomorrow at 11:15. If you are at the NIDA conference, come join us. We are going to talk about parenting in 2018. We have updated some of our questions. I wasn't able to attend last year. You and Brent did it last year and had a packed house.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a good reception every time that we've done it. So hopefully we'll have same sort of good conversation tomorrow. We only have like 4 questions and we got 45 minutes. So there's plenty of time for discussion.
It's always worked before, right? And I said that, I think I tweeted out earlier that that's one of the best things to have come from us doing this in whatever form or fashion we've done it is that we've been able to get into a handful of kind of tech conferences at this point and talked about something that's not tech, talked about parenting and talked about, what roles parents play in their kids' education and how difficult it can be sometimes to be an educator and a parent working in the same district as your kids sometimes. I mean, so it's been one of the great kind of byproducts, I think, of doing this, and one of those things I really look forward to. So I'm glad we're getting to do that tomorrow.
Absolutely.
my share is also going to be kind of around NETA a little bit, but it's going to be a person. One of my colleagues who's a young guy, he's in his 4th, 5th year of teaching, something like that. But he was an instructional coach for us this year, a technology coach, and is just he's going to be absolutely phenomenal. He's already great at it, and is going to be one of those people I think that people want to kind of listen to and see at conferences. And he is presenting on Friday. Chase Piper is his name, and I'll tweet out his Twitter handle and what he's presenting on at NETA if you happen to be there on Friday. But Chase is just a phenomenal coach and colleague. And again, like I said, just a handful of years into his teaching career, and kind of had to push him a little bit to present. He gets a little nervous, but he's just going to be phenomenal at it, and he's got great things to share and great experiences as a former elementary teacher. So Chase Piper is my share of the week, and again, I'll share out his Twitter handle, and I would suggest people, not even if you're not going to be at NETA, to follow Chase and see some of the great things he's doing.
Fabulous. All right, John, we stall long enough for you?
Yeah. All right. So one of the classes I'm teaching this semester is it's a class in our EDD doctoral program, and it's a kind of about legal perspectives for decision making, and teaching it in 4 different units. And the upcoming unit is all about data and information security, privacy. And so this is the book that we're reading, called Privacy in Context: Technology Policy and the Integrity of Social Life. And it's a kind of a new module for me, and it has reminded me that I've learned a lot about issues around technology and data and privacy by engaging with people on Twitter, people like Bill Fitzgerald, who's Funny Monkey on Twitter, and Chris Gilliard is a community college professor who does a lot of work around digital redlining. And there's a guy who's actually in Virginia, Northern Virginia, named Doug Levin. I don't know if you guys follow Doug.
Mm-hmm.
But his site is EdTech Strategies. And he's really, really sharp and up to date on a lot of these issues around data and privacy and security. And Audrey Waters is great on this stuff too. And I feel like this is an issue that folks need to really be paying attention to. Kind of, if you think about in light of the whole Mark Zuckerberg testimony and before Congress last week, I mean, those issues are starting to really crop up in education. And I'm not sure that enough schools and school districts are really paying attention to both kind of the amount of data that we're collecting and what we're doing with those data, not just like how secure are the data, but like what are we doing with those data, and it's really like, are we thinking about it? And so I'm really kind of jazzed up about this whole idea around data and privacy and technology, and so I just wanted to kind of share that.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Awesome.
Hey,
All
Josh,
right.
Before you close the show, I probably should mention on air that my wife did tweet to the hashtag and said she wanted to fact check me and said we have 1 loose bracket and a broken water pick, so the braces aren't going well as maybe I had stated it earlier. So yeah, I may have been wrong.
That's why we stay married. They can correct us every single time. All right. Well, folks, if we don't see you tomorrow, we'll be back in 2 weeks. John, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the conference and safe travels back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.